Welcome to the 85th and the last reading of my memoir, The Innocence of Guilt. Reclaiming my wounded inner child. I didn't have to search very far. I found her curled up deep down inside the still partially open grave-like wound of my psyche, waiting for some sense to be made out of her existence. It would take some time, but I decided to help her. I had to, or she would forever arrest my growth. I coaxed her awake, picked her up, dusted her off, took a good look at her. How neglected she was, how distant and sad she seemed. Poor little girl. But she needed more than pity. I held her close and said she was safe now. I would listen patiently to her needs and allow her to express herself without shame. She never again had to feel unprotected, misunderstood, lonely, or abandoned. I would be her nurturing, protective parent. I'd carry her within me, tapping into her long-forgotten exuberance, her sensitivity, her innate gifts, talents, and passions. I'd invite her into my grown-up self, and gradually we would integrate into the well-rounded, creative, joyful person we were meant to be all along. But first I wanted to take her on a journey, a vision quest. A journey back to the remembered beginning, back to the apple tree of her babyhood, that precious moment in time when she knew love beyond all measure. The apple tree wasn't there anymore, at least not its outer manifestation. Its roots had lain suffocated beneath the concrete skin of a factory parking lot for more decades than I cared to count. Unable to reach out and send forth branches of life, but in my memory it still stood proudly in the garden of my early childhood, as did the house. It only needed memory to take us there. Back through the passages of time we travelled. The old beloved West Stockwell Street house stood waiting at the bottom of the hill. We approached it from above, as if in a dream. We glided over the highest part of the roof, sheltering the attic. The winding stairways, long hall and cluttered rooms of my quintessence of a childhood home. The first home I remembered. I'd left it once as a small child and returned to it 4 years later, and maybe that's why it held such an attraction. It had promised something, which was given, then erased by circumstances and misguided upbringing. The truth, however, still remained and waited to be rediscovered. We reached the end of the garden where the apple tree stood and alighted upon the grass. The low brick wall with the wooden fence behind it stood there to greet us. The children of long ago, whose fragments of laughter had filtered through to baby ears, waited, it seemed. Induced by the strength of our memory, their long-dead voices were gently caught by the breeze and brought back to us, half heard amongst the leaves. The pram sat parked under the tree, and we climbed inside it and lay down. Up above, the leafy branches lightly moved to and fro, serenading us with a blue and green panoply of tranquility, peace, and love. I said nothing for a while, allowing the impact of it to envelop her senses as it did so long ago. When I knew her ready, I spoke. "This is what you forgot," I whispered to my wounded inner child, and she nodded in affirmation, tears filling her eyes. I hugged her close. she remembered. We lay there for a long time as one being, absorbing the myriad sights and sounds of a long ago summer afternoon. The little shafts of sunlight flashing through the leaves, a butterfly posing on a branch, a bee buzzing by a flower, a bird twittering on the top of the fence behind us, and surrounding it all the muted laughter of the children as they played behind the fence in a memory garden. They all were as we were, wonderfully and beautifully created. They asked no questions of us as to their value, and we asked none of them. We existed in perfect harmony, and therein lay our peace. Therein lay our love. All too soon, as the sun moved silently across the sky and the afternoon came to a close, it was time for us to leave. "Let's take this back with us," I said quietly. "We were meant to have it, this knowledge that we are perfectly loved. Never must we lose it, for only now that we know how much we are loved can we love others." We set out on our return journey into our shared futures, where there would be many challenges, some joyous beyond belief, some so sad it would be hard to keep faith alive. But it would all be worthwhile, for with God's help, we would make it so. With the drawing of this love and the voice of this calling, we shall not cease from exploration, and the end of all our exploring will be to arrive where we started and know the place for the first time. T.S. Eliot, from his poem, The Four Quartets. I have 2 tiny white scars hiding amongst hairs on my left forearm. As small as they are, I see them every day. The scars are from cuts made in my vein to start an IV drip during labor with Karen, my first baby. They constantly remind me of that precious time and the miracle that happened with her safe birth. They're good scars. They carry no pain. All physical scars, whether large or small, tell others that you have been through something and that you survived. There are other scars, emotional ones, which no one but the bearer will ever see, the hardest ones to acknowledge. These scars lay hidden deep inside the psyche of the children we all once were, and to some extent still are. The little wounded inner child residing inside me still struggles periodically with the fact of her true worth. She went through much pain and confusion, and so for her there will be no forgetting, for only God forgets. My job as her grown-up caretaker is to constantly remind her of her magical experience under the apple tree of her babyhood, when she spiritually understood, as all children do, her true value. I also have the responsibility of affirming her, helping her reach her full potential in whatever gifts, talents, and passions she uncovers as she grows. A necessary endeavor, because if I ever stop caring about her, I stop caring about myself. She and I are one and the same person. The joys of childhood have embraced me in a liberating fashion since reclaiming my wounded inner child. Joys I thought I would never experience because my childhood had passed. At the advanced age of 56, I took on the challenge of learning to play the flute. Every week for 3 years, I walked to the local Yamaha music school and sat down in the waiting room with school children until my teacher called me in for my lesson. The day I stepped up onto a stage, and played to an audience for the first time was indeed a magical moment. I'm positive that my grandfather, Din Din, watched in happiness from above. A child is ever in a sense of wonder. May I always carry that wondrous sense within me. Thank you for listening. Please feel free to subscribe, like, or comment on this reading. Bye for now.